The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, by Patrick Lencioni. Introduction. Imagine a company that has everything. The smartest people, from the best schools. More money in the bank than they know what to do with. A revolutionary product that could change an entire industry. They're the darlings of Silicon Valley, the team that everyone wants to invest in, the place where everyone wants to work. By all measures, they should be dominating the world. But they're not. Instead, deadlines are slipping. Morale is sinking. The best employees are quietly heading for the exits. The executive meetings, which should be electric with brilliant minds solving big problems, are slow, tense, and boring. Decisions are never made. Nothing gets done. On the surface, everyone is polite. But underneath, it's a culture of backstabbing, politics, and quiet resentment. This company is called DecisionTech, and it's completely, utterly broken. This is the story we're diving into today, from a book that has become a modern classic on leadership, a fable that sold millions of copies and has been read in boardrooms and locker rooms around the world. It's The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Now, Patrick Lencioni isn't just a writer. He spent his life in the trenches with real executive teams, watching them succeed and, more often, watching them fail. And what he discovered is something profound. He found that the ultimate competitive advantage isn't finance, or strategy, or technology. It's teamwork. But not the kind of teamwork we see in motivational posters. He's talking about something raw, difficult, and incredibly rare. Today, I'm not just going to give you a summary of his ideas. I'm going to take you inside the story of DecisionTech. You're going to meet the new CEO they bring in to save the company, a leader so unconventional that the team thinks the board has lost its mind. And through her journey, you and I are going to uncover the 5 simple, yet powerful, dysfunctions that corrupt nearly every team, and more importantly, how to conquer them. By the end of our time together, you will have a blueprint for transforming any group you're a part of, whether it's a sports team, a school project, or your future company, into a force to be reckoned with. Book summary. Our story begins in Half Moon Bay, just over the hills from the heart of Silicon Valley. This is where DecisionTech was born, and for a while, it seemed like it was made of gold. They had the most experienced executive team imaginable, a bulletproof business plan, and a line of investors out the door. But 2 years is a lifetime in technology, and the company had fallen far from grace. After months of missed deadlines and deteriorating morale, the board finally asked the young CEO and co-founder, Jeff Shanley, to step down. Everyone was relieved. They liked Jeff personally, but under his leadership, the executive team had become a collection of individuals, not a unified force. There was no camaraderie, just politics. And so, the search for a new leader began. 3 weeks later, they hired Catherine Peterson. And that's when the real trouble started. To the executives at DecisionTech, Catherine was a puzzle, and every piece seemed wrong. First, she was 57 years old. In Silicon Valley, that's practically ancient. Second, she had zero high-tech experience. Her career was built in the decidedly low-tech world of automobile manufacturing. She'd started her career in the military, married a high school basketball coach, and got her business degree from a state school at night. On paper, she was the polar opposite of the slick, fast-moving culture at DecisionTech. The team was baffled and a little insulted. Catherine's first 2 weeks on the job did nothing to ease their concerns. In fact, it made things worse. She didn't come in with a bold new strategy. She didn't shake things up. She did almost nothing at all. She just watched. She walked the halls, she chatted with junior employees, she sat silently in the back of meetings, taking notes. She even asked the former CEO, Jeff, to keep running the weekly executive staff meetings. The only real action she took was scheduling a series of 2-day off-site retreats in Napa Valley. The team was furious. How could she dare pull them out of the office when there was so much real work to be done? What they didn't know was that Catherine had already diagnosed the company's sickness. She saw that the problem wasn't the product, or the strategy, or the market. The problem was sitting right there, in the executive conference room. She called them the staff. She noticed no one ever called them a team. And that was no accident. Their meetings were painful. No one ever really argued, but the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Decisions were never really made. Discussions were lifeless. Everyone just seemed to be waiting for the clock to run out. Yet, when she met them one-on-one, they were all brilliant, well-intentioned people. There was Jeff, the former CEO, a great networker but a weak manager. There was Mikey, the marketing genius who was known for rolling her eyes in disgust whenever someone disagreed with her. There was Martin, the company's founder and chief technologist, an intellect so towering that he rarely participated in meetings, preferring to answer emails on his laptop, only chiming in to make a sarcastic comment. There was Nick, the ambitious chief operating officer, who secretly believed he was the only one qualified to be CEO and was deeply frustrated that his role had been put on hold while the company sputtered. This was the group Catherine had to fix. And she knew it wasn't going to be pretty. She knew that fixing a broken team is like setting a broken bone. Sometimes, you have to re-break it to make it heal correctly. And the re-break hurts a lot more than the initial break, because you have to do it on purpose. Her first chance came in the form of an email. Martin, the chief technologist, sent a note to the entire team announcing that he and the head of sales, Junior, would be meeting with a huge potential customer next week. The meeting was scheduled for the first day of the Napa retreat. Martin hadn't asked for permission to miss the retreat, he had simply announced he wouldn't be there. It was a power play, a direct challenge to her authority. Catherine knew this was her first moment of truth. She walked to Martin's office. He was typing away, his back to the door. "Martin," she said calmly, "I saw your email about the customer meeting. That's great news. But we'll have to push it back a few days because of the offsite." Martin turned slowly, his expression a mix of disbelief and annoyance. "I don't think you understand," he said, his British accent thick. "This is a potential sales opportunity. You don't just reschedule." Catherine cut him off, her voice still even. "No, I do understand. But I have only one priority right now. We need to get our act together as a team, or we're not going to be selling anything." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and if you need help rescheduling, let me know. I know the CEO down there. He owes me a favor." The battle line was drawn. Martin didn't push back, but he wasn't done fighting. The next day, Jeff, the former CEO, took Catherine to lunch to gently suggest that maybe Martin had a point. Catherine held firm. Then, that evening, the chairman of the board, the man who hired her, called. He was worried. He'd heard about the confrontation. He told her maybe she should try building a few bridges before she started setting fires. This was the moment Catherine had to secure her right to lead. She told him, respectfully but directly, that his good intentions were hurting the company. She reminded him that he'd watched the team spiral into dysfunction for 18 months. He had hired her to fix it. "Are you prepared for the consequences of letting me do this, right?" she asked. "This is not going to be easy. Or pretty." The chairman fell silent. Then he said, "Okay, Catherine. Do whatever you have to do." And so, they all went to Napa. Everyone arrived on time. Everyone except Martin. The team checked their watches nervously. At 8:59 a.m., he walked through the door, sat down at the far end of the table, and immediately pulled out his laptop. Catherine began. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't sound like a drill sergeant. She spoke warmly, calmly. "We have a more experienced and talented executive team than any of our competitors," she started. "We have more cash. We have better technology. And yet, we are behind. Can anyone tell me why?" Silence. "It is very clear to me what our problem is," she continued. "We are not functioning as a team. In fact, we are quite dysfunctional." She then made a statement that got everyone's attention. "It is very possible that some of us here won't find the new company to be the kind of place where we want to be. That isn't a threat. It's just a realistic probability." She walked to the whiteboard and drew a pyramid, dividing it into 5 sections. "Over the years," she said, "I've come to the conclusion that there are 5 reasons why teams are dysfunctional. The trick isn't understanding them. The trick is putting it into practice." She turned and wrote at the very bottom of the pyramid, "Absence of trust." "This," she explained, "is the foundation. It's not about trusting that someone will do their job perfectly. It's about being vulnerable. It's about team members being comfortable saying, 'I made a mistake,' or 'I need help,' or 'You're much better at this than I am.' Great teams," she said, "do not hold back with one another. They are unafraid to air their dirty laundry. They admit their weaknesses and their concerns without fear of reprisal." The team was skeptical. This all sounded a bit too touchy-feely for a group of high-powered executives. But Catherine pushed on. She had them do a simple exercise. Go around the table and answer a few non-intrusive personal questions. Where did you grow up? How many siblings do you have? What was your biggest challenge as a kid? And for 45 minutes, the walls started to come down. They learned that Carlos, the quiet head of customer support, was the oldest of 9 kids. That Mikey, the cynical marketing VP, had studied ballet at Juilliard. That Martin, the aloof technologist, had spent much of his childhood in India. That Catherine herself had been an all-American volleyball player in college. For the first time, they saw each other not as rivals or job titles, but as human beings. The feeling was good, but Catherine knew it was fragile. The real test came next. She asked them each to identify their single biggest strength and their single biggest weakness as it contributed to the team. Nick, the COO, went first. He admitted his weakness was that he sometimes came across as arrogant, sounding like he thought he was smarter than everyone else. Jan, the CFO, confessed that she was too conservative with money, a holdover from her time at bigger companies. Jeff, the former CEO, gave a stunningly honest answer. "I am pretty afraid to fail," he said. "And so I tend to over-engineer things. I think that's probably the biggest reason that we haven't succeeded, and that I'm not the CEO anymore." The vulnerability in the room was palpable. The team was connecting. Then it was Mikey's turn. She looked at her notes and said flatly, "My biggest strength is my understanding of the technology market. My biggest weakness is my poor financial skills." Silence. Her answer was safe, generic, and completely invulnerable. The momentum died. And just as the conversation started to pick back up, a familiar sound filled the room. Click, click, click. Martin was back on his laptop, typing away, completely checked out. Everyone glanced at him, then at Catherine. This was a direct violation of the ground rules she had set. She knew she couldn't let it slide. "Excuse me, Martin," she said. "Are you working on something?" The room froze. "I'm taking notes, actually," he replied, and kept typing. Catherine addressed the whole group. "I've found that laptops are just too distracting," she said. "It's easy to imagine the person sitting there checking email or working on something else." Mikey jumped to his defense. "Catherine, with all due respect, you haven't worked within the high-tech culture. This is pretty common." "Actually," Catherine replied smoothly, "this is very common in the automotive world too. It's more of a behavioral issue than a technological one." And with that, Martin closed his laptop and put it away. The team looked at Catherine as if she had just disarmed a bomb. She had faced down her two most difficult members and won, not through force, but through clarity and resolve. With trust as the new, fragile foundation, Catherine moved to the second dysfunction. She wrote on the pyramid, just above trust, fear of conflict. "If we don't trust one another," she explained, "then we aren't going to engage in open, constructive, ideological conflict. We'll just continue to preserve a sense of artificial harmony." This, she said, was the reason their meetings were so boring. Great relationships and great teams require productive conflict. Not personal attacks, but passionate debate about ideas. Harmony is good, but not if it comes from people holding back their honest opinions. She said their current state wasn't harmony, it was tension. Passive, sarcastic comments and back-channel politics were the symptoms of a team that feared honest debate. To prove her point, she dove right into a real issue. She asked the team to define their single, overarching goal for the rest of the year. Immediately, the debate started. Nick and Junior argued for market share. Martin argued for product improvement. Jan wanted cost containment. For the first time, they were having a real, passionate argument. It was messy. It was uncomfortable. But it was productive. They pushed each other, they challenged assumptions, and in the end, they landed on a single clear goal: acquire 18 new customers by the end of the year. In 1 hour, they had made more progress than they had in the previous 6 months. They had learned to fight. This led Catherine to the third dysfunction: lack of commitment. When people don't unload their opinions and feel like they've been listened to, she said, they won't really get on board. Commitment isn't about achieving consensus, where everyone agrees. That's a recipe for mediocrity. It's about ensuring everyone has been heard. It's about ending a debate, making a decision, and having every single person on the team buy in, even those who initially disagreed. The mantra is disagree and commit. Because they had just fought passionately over their new goal, the entire team was now committed to hitting that number of 18 new customers. With a clear, shared commitment, the stage was set for the fourth dysfunction: avoidance of accountability. This, Catherine explained, is about the unwillingness to call a peer on behavior that is hurting the team. It's hard. It creates interpersonal discomfort. But on great teams, peer pressure is the primary form of accountability. Team members don't wait for the leader to police the group. They have such high standards, and such respect for one another, that they hate the idea of letting their teammates down. They hold each other accountable. And finally, at the top of the pyramid, she wrote the fifth and ultimate dysfunction: inattention to results. This is the tendency for team members to focus on something other than the collective goals of the group. Often, this means focusing on their own individual status or the status of their department. On a great team, the collective results, winning, are more important than anything else. More important than one's ego, career development, or individual recognition. If the team loses, everyone loses. The first offsite ended on a high. But Catherine knew the real work was just beginning. Back in the office, old habits began to creep back in. The real world tested their newfound resolve. Nick, feeling underutilized, pushed for a risky acquisition of another company, Green Banana. It was a move driven more by his own career frustrations than the company's needs. He was dismissive of Mikey's input and openly challenged Catherine's expertise in front of the team. Catherine confronted him privately. It was a heated conversation. Nick confessed his boredom and his fear that he'd made a bad career move. Catherine was firm. "You have to decide what is more important," she told him. "Helping the team win or advancing your career." She didn't know if he would quit. But at the next staff meeting, Nick stood up and did the unthinkable. He apologized. He admitted to the team that his push for the acquisition was more about his own ego. He vulnerably laid out his frustrations and asked for their help in finding a way to contribute. It was a breakthrough moment. And then, in the same meeting, Catherine had to deliver shocking news. Junior, the head of sales, had quit. He'd told her he didn't want to waste any more time at off-site meetings working out people's personal problems. It was a huge blow. The team was shaken. Mikey immediately questioned the whole process. "Are we making things better, or worse?" she asked. The team was at a crossroads. They could retreat back into their dysfunctional shells, or they could rally. It was Martin, the cynical technologist, who spoke up. "I think Junior was just afraid," he said. "Afraid that he didn't know how to sell this stuff." The others agreed. They realized Junior's problem wasn't the team building, it was a fear of accountability. He had never failed in his career and wasn't about to start now. In that moment, the team chose to move forward. And they immediately had to solve a real problem. Who would run sales? With a stunning lack of ego, Nick, the COO who once felt he was above it all, volunteered for the job. The team was starting to function. But one piece still didn't fit. Mikey. Despite the progress, her behavior hadn't changed. She remained cynical, dismissive, and focused only on her own department. During the second offsite, after she presented a new marketing brochure she'd created without any input from the new sales team, Catherine knew she had to act. She asked Mikey to stay after the session. "Mikey," she said, "I don't think you are a fit for this team. And I don't think you really want to be here." The conversation was brutal. Mikey was shocked, then defensive, then threatening. She reminded Catherine that losing both a head of sales and a head of marketing in 1 month would look terrible to the board. Catherine didn't waver. "My job," she said, "is not to avoid confrontation with the board. My job is to build an executive team that can make this company work." Mikey was fired. Catherine worried about how the team would react. And at first, they were scared. "Who's next?" Martin asked. This is when Catherine told them a story about her first management job. She'd had a brilliant, high-performing employee named Fred who was also toxic to the rest of the team. Everyone else complained, but she protected Fred because his individual output was so high. Morale plummeted. 3 of her 7 employees quit. Her department fell into chaos. And in the end, her boss made a decision. He didn't fire Fred. He fired her. "They fired the right person," Catherine told her team. "My tolerance of his behavior was the problem. I don't plan on losing any of you. And that's why I did what I did." In that moment, they understood. Adding by subtracting. Sometimes, to save the team, you have to remove the person who refuses to be a part of it. Over the next year, DecisionTech was transformed. The staff meetings became lively, full of passionate debate that always ended in clear decisions. They held each other accountable. They hired a new marketing VP who was a true team player. They started hitting their goals, growing sales dramatically, and moving into the #1 position in their industry. The final test came when Green Banana, the company Nick had once wanted to buy, made an offer to buy them. The board left the decision up to the team. It was a generous offer. They could all walk away with a lot of money. It was a gut check. Did they have the fire in their bellies to keep fighting together? It was Martin who broke the silence. "No bloody way," he said. "I am not going to hand this over to a company named after a piece of unripened fruit." They all laughed. And they all agreed. They were a team. And they were just getting started. The final, beautiful scene of the fable comes more than a year later. Catherine has reorganized the team to keep it small and agile. Jeff, the former CEO and founder, is now reporting to Nick. No one would have blamed him for being disappointed, for feeling the hit to his ego. But when Catherine tells the team about the change, she smiles and says, "You guys, this was Jeff's idea." He had done it for the good of the company. For the good of the team. He had finally, truly, put results above his own ego. And that is the mark of a team that has conquered all 5 dysfunctions. Commentary. What I love so much about this book is that it's not a dry, academic textbook. It's a story. And through that story, Patrick Lencioni gives us a profound insight into human nature. The 5 dysfunctions: absence of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results, they aren't corporate problems. They are human problems. They show up in our families, in our friendships, and in every group we are a part of. The model is so powerful because it's a pyramid. You can't just decide to be more accountable. It doesn't work. You have to start at the bottom, with trust. And not just any trust, vulnerability-based trust. The courage to be imperfect with one another. That foundation is what makes everything else possible. It allows for the passionate conflict necessary to hash out the best ideas. That conflict leads to real buy-in and commitment. That commitment gives team members the right to hold one another accountable. And that accountability is what keeps everyone laser-focused on the only thing that matters: collective results. The most powerful lesson in this book, for me, is the idea that teamwork is not about being nice. It's about being real. It's about having the courage to enter into the discomfort, to have the difficult conversations, to challenge each other, all in the service of a common goal. It's a choice. It requires discipline and persistence. So, how can you apply this right now, in your own life? Let me offer 3 simple actions you can take today. First, practice vulnerability. The next time you're in a group project or on a team, be the first one to admit you don't know something, or to ask for help. Don't try to have all the answers. Your willingness to be vulnerable will give others permission to do the same, and that is where trust begins. Second, invite healthy conflict. Instead of avoiding a disagreement, try saying something like, "I see it differently. Can we talk about it?" Or if you see others holding back, play the role of the miner of conflict and ask, "It seems like we might not all be on the same page here. What are the rest of you thinking?" Seek out differing opinions, don't suppress them. And third, commit completely. After a decision is made, even if it wasn't your preferred choice, get behind it 100%. Don't second-guess it. Don't passively resist it. Throw your energy into making it succeed. This practice of disagree and commit is one of the most powerful habits of any great teammate. That was a deep dive into the 5 dysfunctions of a team by Patrick Lencioni. We've explored the core lessons through the story of Catherine and her team, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The real magic happens when you read the book yourself. It's in the quiet moments, when a piece of dialogue or a simple turn of phrase hits you in a way you didn't expect. This podcast is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, I truly encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see teamwork, leadership, and yourself. Also, if you found this summary valuable, Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep growing together.